Okay. We had a brief little pause there. Okay, so basically the Ten Commandments. Jesus's ministry occurred at a time when the Romans occupied Israel. Basically, the Roman government was trying to extract resources, wealth. The Israelites were basically being exploited by taxes, and the priestly class was complicit in this. They were basically complying with the Roman government. The Second Temple basically served to extract wealth from the populace. They were charging basically for religious services and sacrifices. It no longer really served the purpose that it had in the past. The faith that began with Moses was in a period of corruption. People were not good to each other. The priestly class that was supposed to look out for the populace was complying with the Romans. Here's a Bible verse that kind of explains what was going on. These people worship me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their rules are merely human rules. You have let go of the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions. Mark 7, 1 through 15. So basically, the Pharisees, the priestly class, were trying to serve as intermediaries between the Romans and the Israelite population, basically just to honor the demands of the Romans and to secure the government that was in place. The first covenant provided obligations that were primarily behavioral. They were basically goals of behavior that you were meant to follow. And let's see what else here. It says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and the Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence." Matthew 23 to 25. So basically, they were observing these traditions, but they weren't really honoring what these traditions stood for. And it was to honor God, and it was to honor our commitment to each other, to love each other as our brother. The Pharisees were living up to their external obligations, but internally, psychologically, and spiritually, they were corrupt, exploiting their political and social positions. Israel was waiting for a Messiah. Jesus Christ was this Messiah who freed humans from sin and wrote the law on the hearts of people. He came to fulfill the law and to bring a spiritual dimension to the law. He didn't come to get rid of the law. And it says in the Bible here, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have come not to abolish the law or the prophets, but to fulfill them." Matthew 5, 17 through 18. Jesus came to address the root causes of sin, the mental and emotional states that arise that make us vulnerable to breaking these laws. One of them is anger. And I'm sure that all of us have felt anger. And a lot of times we often regret what comes of that. And in some cases, especially back then, murder would have been one of the possible consequences of anger. And then here's the Bible verse that I quote: "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'You shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you, anyone who is angry with their brother or sister will be subject to judgment. The new covenant addresses what goes on internally. A lot of times the Pharisees were observing these external traditions, these material traditions, but the way that they judged their fellow man, the way that they treated their fellow man, was not in accordance with what God wanted from us. And here I talk about another emotional state that leads to sin, lust. You've heard it said that you will not commit adultery, but anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery in his heart. What occurs in the mind, in the heart, is important and almost more important than our actions. Our intentions matter. Love for our fellow people, for their individuality, to honor their divinity as children of God is what God is asking us to do. And here I quote one of the most amazing passages in the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure at heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Jesus tells us that God honors the just, those who mourn, those who hunger and those who thirst, those who sacrifice worldly ambition and show their purity of spirit, who seek peace, who turn away from judgment and wrath, and live a life that shows that they love their neighbor and their brothers and sisters as themselves. The Lord endeavors us to be as children, not naive, not immature, but not to be like him in the sense that they don't compromise their soul and their virtue for worldly power. And they show the strength in love and the love in strength. All human achievements worthy of admiration flow outward from a wellspring of love and depth of spirit, and channel the essence of an eternal and all-powerful God. Christ made a sacrifice by living his eternal word. Eventually, the empire that was oppressing the Israelites no longer stood on the face of the earth. And actually, in the 300s, Emperor Constantine himself kneeled before Christ. And to this day, Rome is a Christian city. The Vatican still exists as a sovereign state. So in a way, Christ was the true Messiah and conquered the Romans, not by being a military leader, destroying them militarily, but by accepting them into his kingdom of heaven as brothers and sisters. The New Testament has a simple obligation, gives us a simple it lends us a simple obligation. And it's very profound, although simple, to love God with all our hearts and minds, and to love our neighbors as ourselves, and also to love ourselves in a way such that the love we have for our neighbors as ourselves is something worthy of God's admiration. So as I tell you about the second covenant, I want you to really reflect on this. Bring it on with you. Think about how you can find space in your own life to love God more, to love yourself more, and to love your neighbor more. This is basically the contract God has with us. This is the kingdom of heaven that God spoke of. It can exist on earth. So I want all of us to reflect and to love each other and to go forth knowing that Christ died so that we could have this gift. We could have the law written on our hearts. Thank you.